right, welcome to the Gen Z Show, brought to you by Generation Ziegler. I'm your host, James McLamb, and I'm brought to you by one of my co-hosts for today, our guest host today, Isaiah Mousen. How you doing, Isaiah?
I'm doing awesome. How you doing, James?
I'm doing well. How are things up in Minnesota?
Things are warm in Minnesota right now, getting all the warmth we can get in before winter hits, which should be in about a week now.
Actually, I'm glad you said that. I was going to say, it's very rarely that you can use the word warm in Minnesota in the same. What is warm for a Minnesota?
Warm right now, it's about 88, 89 degrees, but this morning it was about 99% humidity. So.
Okay, that's like North Carolina weather. It's like being in the South. I'm really excited for the guest that we have on the Gen Z Show today. It's a gentleman by the name of Kevin Williams. Now, for those of you who do not know Kevin Williams, you may not know him now, but you're never going to be able to forget him after this interview. Kevin Williams is currently the musical director for Gaither Music. That involves the Gaither Vocal Band, the Gaither Homecoming series. He's an instrumentalist, mainly guitarist that lives in Nashville. He's been a part of the Christian, both contemporary Christian and Southern gospel scene, and started being able to produce music and help music for, almost 3 decades now. But he also is a Ziegler Legacy certified trainer. So he's part of the Ziegler family as well. So there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about today on this show, just a whole lot of stuff that he is going to share. What did you like the most about what he's going to share with us today?
The whole show was awesome. I absolutely love being part of it. Kevin had so many awesome insights he brought. And in the first half, we kind of dove into kind of personal growth side of things. Kevin shares in his story how from an early age, he knew he was going to be a guitar player. He knew it. And so I thought that was interesting. And we dive in, and each of us, the other guest hosts and James, we all dive in and ask him more questions about what did that look like? How did you know it? How did you get that bravery to actually follow? Because one of the things I loved most about what he said is how he said, he gave the importance of following what you're put here to do. But at the same time, he put in that piece like, hey, it's going to be hard. And here's some of the things you need to know going into that. So I love that part of what he shared. Our
other guest host for today was Mr. Brandon Bumgardner from Oklahoma.
Hey,
how are you doing, Brandon?
Doing good, James. Man, really enjoyed the call.
Isaiah and I were just chatting about the call that we're about to share with our audience and some of the things. And Isaiah was talking about the first half of the call really drove in personal development. The second half, though, is when we talked about the power of music. Talk to us a little bit about what you gleaned from that portion.
Man, I thought it was phenomenal how he just began talking about how music has such an effect and a power on people. Specifically when he talked about how he would go to the nursing home and just the light bulb that would go off in the people's mind, even though, their brain wasn't what it used to be. That effect of music was still enamored in their brain. And that was just awesome to see. Also loved how he talked about how Bill Gaither, how intentional he is with being sensitive to what's going on and how he picks music on the spot. I didn't know it was all spontaneous. I thought it was.
Wow, yeah, I know. That was shocking.
Yeah, that
for both of you guys being, artists that do concerts and stuff, I saw both of your eyes that got light up like, what?
Wow.
Yeah.
Everything's awesome. Kind of just like, you don't know where it's going to go. So, that was pretty amazing to be able to hear from him, both from a personal development standpoint of how youth can really find their purpose, follow their dreams and passion to achieve their goals, and also how music can really influence us. This is going to be a great show. You listen, audience, you may not have heard of him before. This may not be what type of music that he works in may not be the genre you're used to listening to. Right. I guarantee you're going to want to look this guy up. You're going to go to the show notes and find him and click on the link so you can hear more and see more about what he does. So let's stop our talking, our chatter, and let's go straight to the show with Kevin Williams.
You guys are going to love it.
Yes.
All right, guys, we're starting another Gen Z show call, and I want to welcome Kevin to the program. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm great, James. Thanks for having me with you today.
Well, I'm really excited to be able to talk with you today. I have been a long-term fan of what you have done musically wise, especially probably the last decade and a half, 2 decades, as I've seen more of you in videos. Now, these folks probably are too young to, the guests that we have with us are too young to view. I actually have them on VHS. I'm old enough to have the original, some on VHS.
I have those as well. Yeah, I've got a collection of those.
But many of our younger audience, our Gen Z community, they may not know who you are and the things that you've done. How about introducing yourself to us?
I'm Kevin Williams. I'm coming to you from Nashville. I've lived here since the late 80s, originally a Kentucky boy. They used to call us hillbillies, and now we are Appalachian Americans. So, so that's something that I proudly claim. And yeah, I've been in music, professional music, since the late 80s. All growing up, I'm an only child, and so I knew I was supposed to play a guitar somehow. And if you ask me how I know that, I don't have a great answer for you. I just knew it. And I was dragging a guitar around from the time I was in diapers, and began to take lessons and learn, and played with a lot of the Christian groups in my area, church choirs, anybody would let me play in from the time I was 12 years old on. And then about 10 years later, I decided to make that a professional choice and moved to Nashville, and began to do song demos and recording sessions and that kind of thing. Began to lead bands, led TV show bands, and it just began to progress one thing to another. And so I've done that all of my professional career. My first job, however, was in radio. We had a small town radio station, my hometown, Russell Springs, Kentucky. And so I worked in radio 4 years. So I was around music, and then God took me into music. And that's always been what I've done in one way, shape, or form. And for the last 28 years, I've been the guitarist and the band leader for a group called the Gaithers. In the 70s, it was known as the Gaither Trio, and then the Gaither Vocal Band, the Gaither Homecoming TV series. I've been musical director on a lot of those shows. So basically, Bill and Gloria Gaither have written so many songs that have been popular in Christian music for the last 50 years. And so for 28 of those, I've gotten to serve the songs and the community in some way, whatever way I could weasel into, I kind of did, you know. So it's been very good.
That's kind of, when you said 28 years, I'm coming up on my 28th wedding anniversary, and my wife and I, when we started following the Gaither Vocal Band. So your career during that time is when we started following. I think I have almost everything they had up until, recording wise, up until things became easier to just listen to on Spotify.
Sure. Sure. I understand. Yeah, that's where we are now for sure. I'm a star on Spotify.
Kevin, you mentioned that you very early on knew that you were meant to play the guitar. And our younger audience, the audience that we have, they may be struggling a little bit understanding what their why is, what their purpose is.
Sure.
Really understanding how to follow their dreams, really understanding how to follow their passion. What advice could you give them based on your experiences to help them get to where they want to go?
Well, it's a loaded question. So for me, I had a knowing inside me that I was supposed to do that. And here again, I can't explain that, but very rarely can you explain a knowing. A knowing is something that sort of defies logic. And so I had that. Now it takes guts to sell out to that. And so I remember at 17, 18 years old, I was really kind of freaked out because I didn't have this clear plan of a college path that I thought I was supposed to have by that age. And some have it. Some can see right down the road for a lot of miles. And I was not one of those kids. My interests were very varied. I had skills, I think, that were pretty varied too. I was good at a lot of things, it seemed like. And so how do you form a career path that's going to encompass the rest of your life based on what you know at 18, and it was very hard. So for me, there's a couple things that come into play there. One, I'm a born again Christian, and so I commit all of those things to God in prayer. My favorite scripture is in Proverbs, and it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean to your own understanding. It goes on to say that he'll make your path straight if you do that. And that's sort of a promise to us. It's not just some piece of ancient writing, you know. So I really bought into that. And I began to trust what I felt in my spirit, what I felt like was a calling, and pursue that. That is not the easiest thing to do, and you'll question yourself for doing it, especially when things get tough, and especially when I moved to Nashville and I was starving in a one-bedroom apartment and not making any money and nobody was hiring me. You know, you begin to question things. But I think the knowing has to win out. And you're right when you say the why, Simon Sinek's phrase, the why. That is something you need to find out as early as you can in life. And the why is going to look different at different seasons in your life. But the why will remain true to who you are and who you're called to be. For me, my why is to bring hope and encouragement, light and life to people. Now, he gave me a guitar as a tool to do that with in the early years. Later gave me a sense of humor to be able to kind of convey messages and themes through a humorous way. And now I have something more to say. You know, I actually have some words, I feel like, at this season in my life. So God has used different tools to make that why come alive in my life. But I hope that answers your question. I know that's a roundabout answer, but that's a loaded question, I think.
I like when you indicated what your why was. I thought that was very pronounced, very intentional what you said your why is. So let's build on that. How important do you think it is for younger people to start to develop a very concrete or something that they can actually see as far as their why is?
I think happiness, you know, is built on that. We all go through life wanting to be happy. And now as a parent, I have kids who are 19 and 21, and you just want their happiness. But happiness has to be built on something. And so for me, you know, I had a foundation that I learned from Zig Ziglar, you know, to build everything on the Word of God, because it's the only thing that won't change. And I take that very seriously. Your why is built on that, is built on some sort of foundation, and becomes part of the very fabric of who you are. So every day's purpose takes on some shade of that, some echo of that. And do I think it's important to figure that out early? Yeah, I do. To some, as I say, it just seems to be there. And for me, I think it was there and I denied it quite a few times. I would start analyzing. I would say, I would go down the columns. What am I good at? What are my strengths? What do I da-da-da? And those are all important. But inside, I knew, James, that I was supposed to bring a smile to somebody's face every day of my life, whether that is through a joke or through playing a song or opening a door for somebody. So I knew that and sort of covered that over with logic, I think. I think we tend to make it harder than it is sometimes. Now, would you agree with me on that?
I do.
Yeah. And Kevin, like to dive in a little further there, like you shared inside, you always knew, and maybe sometimes you just weren't honest, or it was that hard thing to face. And especially when, I think for those of us who are born again, and a lot of our listeners are, it seems like Zig tends to attract that type of a crowd. So when you're talking to young people who are followers of Christ and who have that longing, that urge inside that, hey, I know I was put here for more. I know I was put here for a purpose. And yet as they look to culture will say, hey, be realistic, like get a job, get married, have a family, retire at 65. That's what you're supposed to do. So what advice would you give when they're faced with that choice? Like, as you shared, there came those hard times when you're in Nashville, when you're in that apartment, when you didn't have jobs, didn't have stuff coming in. What advice would you give to young people who are facing that decision?
So I think here again, we talk a lot about thinking in the box and out of the box. You know, we use those terms a lot. I grew up in a beautiful small town America setting, and I was taught through well-intentioned, wonderful, loving people, but it was the culture. I was taught to think in the box, think safety, think security for your life. And so I came out, I had 2 years of vocational industrial training in electricity. So I could wire your house. You wouldn't want me to wire your house, but I could do it. So I did have an interest in that. That was enjoyable to me. And so my thinking was, I'll go on and pass my state license and I'll become an electrical inspector. And that would mean some security for me down the road. And so you can follow that line of thinking, and there's really nothing wrong with that. My challenge to anybody listening to this call is to embrace that and yet think outside it. Okay, think bigger, badder, bolder. I mean, be who you're called to be. Be audacious. And so when you start thinking in those terms, and I had read the Magic of Thinking Big by Schwartz, you know, and it just challenged the whole way that I saw the world and saw myself. Could I really go out and make an impact on the world? Could I not only make a living playing the guitar, because that was a big part of this? Can I make money from a skill I have and trade that for dollars somehow, you know? But can I make an impact on the world doing so? And if I am true to what God's given me to do today, will he give me something else? Will my talents increase? You know, like that little parable that we read in the Bible. So I found all of that to be true. And it starts with thinking outside that box, understanding your why. And then now, who am I going to be based on this? What shade of purple am I, you know, or whatever. I remember I wore my hair a little different than everybody, and it was just because I had funky hair. I wasn't trying to be rebellious, you know, and I enjoyed life. And so I went around with a smile on my face, and that was unusual to people. I said hello to everybody I met on the street, you know. And nowadays, if you say hi, they think you got a motive, you know. But I've just always kind of been that way, and I would challenge anybody to just toss the in-the-box thinking aside for a day or two and say, who could I be? If I colored outside the lines, who could I really be, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure. Kevin, I think you're giving some good advice there. You know, we're all on this call because of the impact of one man in particular, Zig Ziglar. How has he, you know, shaped your life? What do you remember about him being the defining factor that you said, man, that's somebody I want to be associated with?
I thought you'd never ask. If you're on this call, chances are you know who Zig Ziglar was and what his legacy is. I am what they call a ZLC, a Ziglar Legacy Certified Trainer and Speaker, and I proudly uphold what Mr. Ziglar had set forth in books and speeches throughout his whole career. A lot of character principles and a lot of ways to live life. Here was a guy that found success as a salesman and sales trainer, and then began to say, you know what, that's just a part of life. Let me show you how you can live rich and full lives, you know. So I was working at the radio station that I told you about by the time I was 17, I was working there part-time in high school. And then after high school, I was working there, and I had taken on different jobs. And one of those was selling radio advertising. So I knew I could make some extra commission money selling advertising to businesses. And I wanted to know how to do that better. And I had heard an audio called Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. And it was stirring. It was profound. It was a way to sell that I had never heard. It involved no pressure. It involved leading someone to a logical conclusion that this product would meet their needs, you know, and somebody who was teaching this stuff that obviously had integrity. I kind of wasn't used to that, you know. So he was going to be in Lexington, Kentucky, and at a all-day seminar thing. I think my ticket was $25. In fact, this is when I was 19 years old, 18 or 19, and I've got my ticket from that day right there. And I'll tell you how much it was. Oh, look at that. It's 25. Yeah, and that was reserved.
Wow.
So, okay, and this is, what year is this? 1984. Okay, I went to Lexington, Kentucky, and saw Mr. Ziegler captivate 2,500 business people sitting there that day in that convention center. And this was a totally secular program. He was giving skills about business and you know, and sales all day long. All the speakers were. He was the closing keynote. He came out in a ball of energy, lit that stage up, and I was a little bit taken by that too. I like somebody who's, you know, and we all want a commanding sort of leader, somebody can make decisions, is a visionary, and can convey and communicate very clearly to us. And he had all of that, man. It was just a profound day in my life. And at the end of his talk, he began to say some of the things that I now say about you have to build your life on some sort of foundation. And you can do that with drugs. You can do it with alcohol. You can do it in a relationship. A lot of people do it a lot of different ways. He said, but for me, it's the Word of God. It's the only thing that will never change. And he began to lay that out step by step. And I tell you, I said, I want to be that when I grow up. I may not look like that. I may not sound like that, but I want to be that. So I stood in line, and the line wrapped around the building, and I got my See You at the Top book. James, you probably got one that looks similar to this. And he autographed it inside there with a scripture, which was the scripture about I am the vine and you're the branches.
Wow.
And I read that over and over again. And I thought, I want to be a branch, you know, I want to be a good branch. Well, so fast forward from 1984 to, let's see, what year would this have been? 2004. So 20 years later, we had him on our stage in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. We had Zig in to speak at an event the Gaithers call Family Fest. And
at the convention center there in Gatlinburg?
The convention center. And we had about 6,000 people. The building was loaded. And I got to introduce one of my heroes.
Wow.
On stage.
Wow.
And I held up my little book, and I told, because I believe in giving honor. Honor is a biblical principle.
It is.
And Zig, if you go to his office, he has a wall of honor and people that poured into his life. And that's important to me. And if you're on this call today and you see me tearing up, yeah, that probably ain't cool, but it's genuine, because I'm just another generation of the principles that he laid down. He was another generation of somebody before him. And if you want your life to succeed, and maybe you're facing something today that's an insurmountable challenge to you. Maybe you don't know how you'll get out of the location you're in, or out of the job you're supposed to take on that maybe has been handed to you by your family. Maybe you're trying to shed a label that's been handed to you that says you're not quite smart enough, you're not quite good enough. So if you will immerse yourself in these truths, and I'm just one guy that did this, okay? But if you will get the truth and immerse yourself in it, you can go anywhere with your life, and you'll fully succeed in that why, and you'll be the best version of you could ever be.
Wow.
I pulled my headphones out on that one.
Wow.
I started to go to my bookshelf and get the same book, the See You at the Top.
I know you've got it.
Well, I actually have two copies, and I would have grabbed it. I looked back, and I was like, but I don't know which one is which, because there's one copy that was given to us, like Brandon got and you got, you know, when we get to the legacy training.
Right.
But the other copy, I was a part of the first legacy class, and they gave us the option to go into their archives and get a copy of the last books that he signed.
Wow.
So, you know, there were like 4 or 5 different choices in there, and I knew we were getting seated at the top, but I wanted one we knew that had his signature in it. So I actually got that. And then to kind of complete the circle, I had Tom, Julie, and Cindy sign it as well.
That's so great. This was such a great memory to me because Zig would show up at our concerts. He would buy a ticket. We'd just look out in the audience, and there would be Zig Ziglar and Julie and Cindy and the redhead. And you know, now Tom was much too cool to come to this thing. But
the words "cool" and Tom Ziegler are rarely ever used in the same word.
He's going to thank me for that. So, but I'm telling you, you know, who just buys a ticket? And he would just bring his family and enjoy the time with the family. And so it was very meaningful to me to get to introduce him on stage. And then as he did the plug for, so this is kind of funny too. That was a morning, you know, probably 90 minutes, 80 minutes that he did. The night before, he did a little, you know, 7-minute plug of the next day, like you would normally do. And he came up by me and he handed me his watch. And he said, I'm going to talk for exactly 7 minutes. He said, at 6 minutes, you just wave like this and I'll wrap it up. And so I did my job really well. This is Zig Ziglar, right? You know, so at 6 minutes, I did that. He wrapped up right on 7 minutes, came down with a thunderous ovation, came over to me and collected his watch and said, "You did good." Wow. A great memory.
Oh.
Well, part of our goal at Generation Ziglar and the Gen Z Show is to bring these principles that he was teaching to a new generation.
Yes.
What we've realized, and Brandon and Isaiah know this as well, is that it seems like what we are teaching a lot of young people today is too complicated.
Yeah. That
we're trying to add all these fancy layers of how to do leadership, and there's very few people who are able to simplify things the way that he did. Simon Sinek obviously is one, and I would say John Gordon, if you know him, is another one. But beyond that, everything else seems to be, let's make it complicated. Let's add all these different layers. And so we wanted to help young people so they could be, do, and have all that God has entitled them to do. Has really given them the opportunity to do.
I believe that as well. We tend to really make it what it's not really about sometimes. And I've done that in my life too. I've tended to overthink things in my life. And sometimes it will help. We are not a culture prone to solitude. We don't take time to get away by ourselves. Right. And I'm a country boy, you know, so to get in the woods, or I love kayaking, I love to get on a river somewhere. But to do something like that by yourself, so that you can let all of that kind of busy thinking get away and hear the true voice that's inside you that is really wanting to shape your life and take you somewhere. Now, sometimes that just takes old-fashioned solitude, and it's not comfortable to us sometimes. Right. It's just not natural. We especially if you're a social person, you just want to do things with people, and you want to do things until you are just collapsing in the bed at night. And sometimes the true direction of your life is just revealed in the really quiet moments.
Wow. And that's one thing I've noticed too. It's interesting as you read through the story of Jesus, you see oftentimes it talks about how he went out by himself to pray. Sometimes it's early in the morning, sometimes it's late at night. And it's interesting because I'm part of a small Bible study, and we were just going through the book of John. And it's after he feeds the 5,000, does this amazing miracle, and all these people are like, hey, we want to make him king. All of a sudden, that's when he disappears and he goes off in the middle by himself. Yeah. And I totally agree. I think that's something we've lost as a culture, especially as young people, where we're so used to any spare moment, grabbing a device of some sort or flipping a TV on, or anything we can do. You're right. Anything we can do to I guess, numb that pain of not knowing exactly what we want to do. And we're just so used to it. It's so easy to do. Mm-hmm. And so I totally agree.
I think you're exactly right. And you were named after a great prophet, Isaiah. And of course, Brandon, you were named after the great wise Brandon. So, but I think you're exactly right. And in that one scenario in John there that you're referring to, he needed that to keep things in perspective. After, we all know in business or in any kind of situation, if you have a lot of success really quickly, you're going to need to get that in some perspective, and for me, it's always been those quiet moments of solitude. It's where I find God speaks to me. And I have to get out of my head and get into my heart. That's where the knowing is. The knowing's never in your head. And the other thing I find too is it seems to me, we talk about being uncomfortable with being quiet, and that is certainly, even at our church now, we feel compelled to teach others how to pray, and so let's start with gratitude, and all those things are right. But I try not to formalize life. I want to live life. I want to experience life. And if you're questioning anything, and I know the age group we're talking to right now, and you're questioning a lot of things, okay? Then my suggestion is immerse yourself in what is actually true, and what you know is true, and what will not change. Okay, for me, here again, the Word of God. But you can take any book of Zig Ziglar's and read the character principles in it. They're dead on. I mean, they are high noon, baby. And immerse yourself in that, and then get away from the noise and see how that speaks to you. I promise you that will direct you in some providential way that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. It will lead you down the right path.
Wow. Kevin, that's so good. Do you know what is the greatest leadership lesson from Zig that you've applied in your life? Is there a quote or a statement or a level of principle that has just impacted you greatly?
Yeah, we always go back to that. You can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And so basically that is a Zigism off of sowing and reaping. I think the biblical principle is always you're going to reap what you sow. And then we have a lot of wonderful religions that call it karma. And for me, I live under grace, and grace supersedes karma, So I'm thankful for that. But in any situation in life, you're going to get out of it what you put into it multiplied. So why not just start out going in the right direction and plant the seeds where they need to go? Yeah. If you need to course correct, what is inside you and the voice of God that I understand will speak through you and correct you. But sometimes it takes some action. You got to get going. And that's Tom Ziegler's a part of that whole equation is, you may be born to win, but you got to choose to win. Right. And I love putting the action with it. Faith is only tested through action. So I go back to that one Zigism every time, Brandon, but it's an old tried and true proverb that I've seen manifest itself in my life too.
Awesome.
Well, I want to take this in a little bit different direction as we've discussed so far about the young people that we have and the way that they can follow their passion. And I like the fact that you talked about the time of taking some solitude. Before I move to the other, I wanted to mention the fact I think that might be a positive from our time of being here in this COVID quarantine era, is that Absolutely. We've been forced to slow down and really, rely and look inside ourselves. Unfortunately, for many youth, they are still, tied to their phones so much.
Sure.
What is going on? But that's going forward on that. I've been working with some local athletes as they're preparing for what they hope to be an athletic season this year, if they can ever get out of quarantine here in North Carolina. And as they're preparing and they're working out, one of the things that's really distressed me a lot is their playlist, is the music that they listen to. Now, I grew up in a very musical family as well, not quite to the extent of maybe as Isaiah's family of traveling through, but my mother was the pianist for our small church. My dad wasn't a worship leader, he was the song leader. There's a difference there. A song leader walks out and says, get your green hymnal and turn to page 248, and then leads and then goes and sits back down.
You're going to have to explain what a hymnal is now.
It's those books that you read music out of when it's not on a screen. The very first, before I go into this, this made me think of this. I'm going to tell this story because it's my show and I can do this.
Absolutely.
The very first time, I was attending a church. I was fresh out of college, and they started singing, and they weren't using hymnals or anything. And I looked around to see where they were getting the words, and I noticed everybody was just had their hands up and they were lifting up their eyes up, and I was like, wow, these are really worshipful people. They're all praising God. So I decided to lift my eyes up to heaven too. And as I lifted my eyes up, I caught, oh, there's a screen up there where the words are at.
No. I love it.
I didn't know. I was like, oh, okay, well now I know what to sing. This is my
Now we
first
know where
time.
to put the words. Yeah.
Yeah, they're up there. I thought they were praising. They were up there.
That's beautiful.
So hymnals. So, but I grew up. So music's very important to me, and one of the things that I know that we as youth development leaders, we really want to stress to youth is, hey, we want you to live lives of being able to put the pure, the power, the positive in you. We want you to stay away from growing up having racist attitudes, having sexist attitudes. Yet we tolerate them in our music.
Right. That's a good point.
And I think there's some naivety there on those who are leading youth to think that they can let them listen to these things and then not influence them. So the power of music and influence, I just wanted to see, not really a question, but just open the door and let you talk.
Sure. I think you're so right on that. We give music a pass in a lot of ways because it's art, and we don't want to interfere with art, you know. And I just go back to input output. Whatever you continually put in your brain is going to influence the way you think. It's going to form, you know, science shows continual input changes neurological pathways. So it's how we create habits, and therefore habitual thinking, racism, sexism, whatever. So I used to watch the news a lot, because I wanted to just stay current. Now I watch it just enough. And it's not the last thing before bed at night either, because I got convicted about what I was putting in my brain. It was just, you know, I don't want that. I don't want to live that life. Yeah. My music choices are pretty good now. Now I see my teenage daughters, they're 19 and 21 now. And so their tastes are pretty eclectic. Artistically is pretty good, but there are a couple of pop artists that I really like, and yet the lyrics are pretty bad, man. You know, not profane, just bad themed. And so we've had to have those talks and say, man, I love the way she sings, but she got to make some better choices. I mean, come on, this is a real world, you know? And so are we going to celebrate that? Are we just going to play it because she's got great tones, you know? Or are we're going to actually talk about what's real and right here, input. So, but I do think music gets looked over a lot of times. If we created some sort of sexist statue, it would get torn down immediately. The racist statues are being torn down as we speak, and yet our music is still reflecting those ideas a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Brandon, as you've worked with youth, is that something that you've had to encounter as well, or?
Yeah, you know, it seems like we're wanting freedom in so many areas of our lives, especially with youth. We want freedom and we want independence, but it seems like when we allow these influences in, it puts up barriers and walls. It's very hard to reach people when those walls are up and they come from those influences. So that's something that I've seen just from working with high school students, and it's a challenge. And Kevin, what advice would you give to students that are trying to overcome those challenge of so many influences on their phone, on their laptop,
Sure.
on their iPad, friends, anything?
Hey, great question again. Well, it comes down to it's your choice. Your
Correct.
life's your choice. And I can't choose your life for you. I can give you all the tools, and I can give you, you know, James and I are about the same class here, so we can impart all of the wisdom we have at our age, but it's your choice.
Right.
And you should choose a great, extraordinary life. You should be somebody extraordinary. don't choose mundane, don't choose average. And average is what's listening to what we're talking about out there. That's what's normal. Don't choose normal. Be abnormal. Be wild and crazy and above all of that, okay?
Yes.
But choose this stuff for your life, and choose what goes in your brain, and choose what comes out of your mouth, and choose life, choose wholeness, choose happiness. You'll find freedom in that. Even if you just make one choice today, if you're 18 years old and you just make one choice today that is about you and is a positive thing that you're going to do, you'll find opportunities to make two choices tomorrow. It will springboard like you've never seen it in your life. But I can't make those choices for you. I can't give you the drive and ambition that you've got to choose to have. I think it is, cultural influence has always been there. This is nothing new. It's just a new shade of it, you know. When I was growing up, even in rural Kentucky, I remember what those influences were, and they just look different now, you know. I think it's probably harder now. I do think that. Because we didn't have 24/7 news back then. We didn't have the internet. Nothing was instant. Instant coffee wasn't instant back then. But, you know, it just boiled down to, it was my choice. It just was. And you commit your way to the Lord, and he makes it succeed. He ordains your footsteps. But I have to commit whatever that is to God. It's my choice. So I just make that really personal with everybody. And if you think you're doomed to a life of XYZ, why should I try? It's never going to make a difference. Why would, you know, I would challenge your thinking on that. I think you were what is the great Zig quote that I can never remember about being endowed with the seeds of greatness? And I think you were born that way, and it is up to you to choose. And I'll help you in any way I can. And us being there for each other, I think, is a positive, like this call, and James, like what you've been able to do with this wonderful organization, empowering the youth in this way. Now, we didn't really have that kind of thing when I was growing up, and I would have welcomed some sort of thing, you know, any kind. About the only leadership training we had was if you were in ROTC or something like that, you know, you got something. But to have this kind of encouragement, I think, is vitally important.
Well, my favorite Ziegler quote relates to this and the power of music, and it is, you are what you are and where you are by what goes into your mind. And you can change what you are. You can change where you are by changing what goes into your mind, which is why I heart so much with these gyms and everyone who is working with these youth. The other coaches that are working with them, when they say, "Oh, it's not an influence of mine," I says, you're really underestimating the power that music can have to change your mood. How many of you learn? How many of the four of us learn Bible verses in church through music?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I did.
Huge influence.
Yeah.
And you still remember those songs. Your brain still goes back to those songs. I have taken a guitar to a nursing home before, and where there were stone looks and frozen stares, 5 minutes later, they are singing the hymns that they remember from their youth. That stuff stays in your brain.
Yeah.
And so I see that firsthand.
I didn't think about that this might come up, but my wife directed for years a girls ensemble, high school girls ensemble through our church, and we would lead them. She would teach them worship principles, and then we would take them on tour every summer to the mountains of North Carolina. And one of the places that we would go to was a home for people who were elderly, who were experiencing dementia or reduced mental capacity, or some that through their life had those problems. And it was amazing to me how powerful it was that these people who had to be wheeled in a lot of times and were not paying attention, how their eyes would light up and they would look up when these girls started singing. I mean, the girls were just beautiful singers anyway, but just to listen to them. And one thing that's always stuck up into my mind is there was always a section in their concert where the girls would say, okay, we're going to sing some hymns now, please join with us. And she said this, the girl who was appointed, she said, join us singing the songs. And one lady who was experiencing some her faculties were diminished greatly at this time. She got up out of her chair, walked to the front, and stood with the girls. Didn't sing because she couldn't formulate the words, but she wanted to be there. She had joined with them because that's what she had told her. She said, join with us as we sing. And so she got up and sang. And we saw the progression of that lady in that the last time that we went there, she was in such capacity she could not even sit in a chair upright. They had to bring her in on a bed, and she was completely on. But at the same time, she would be moaning and making noises when she would come in, and when they would start singing, her mood and everything would just be calm and influential. How naive it is for us to think that music cannot influence people positively.
It totally does. And God's used me in a way, I've just been so blessed to be the way of opening the door sometimes with a guitar. I will come out, if you've ever seen our Gaither concerts, I come out about 10 minutes before the thing even starts, and I just play some songs on the guitar. I come out with no introduction or anything. And it's an attempt to just get everybody to come on in, exhale, and relax, and, and I've always taken that little position upon myself because I love that. I love opening doors. And I feel like that's what I'm doing there is just allowing. But when you start playing something familiar like that, I think for some people it just takes them back nostalgically, but there's something peaceful about it, something relaxing, something soothing, something inviting and welcoming in that. And a lot of the music I hear today is not inviting and welcoming, you know. So I'm not one of these guys going to bash current music. I've never been that. And I could give you a list of singers I think are phenomenal right now. But yeah, let's check what's going in our brain, man. Put some positive stuff in there. And you know what? If you can't find anything positive to put in there, write something and sing it.
Good.
You be the person. You be the change.
Wow. That's good.
And bouncing off of that,
there. Go ahead, Isaiah.
I'd say bouncing off of that, Kevin, because some of the people listening here, obviously this is one side of the coin, what we're consuming, right? So how about on the other side, what we're producing? So obviously working with the vocal band, doing stuff with your own, there are decisions that have to be made of, okay, what are we going to present from stage? What do we feel God is calling us to do? And sometimes those decisions that have to be made, our family has to make when we're playing music of, okay, this is a good song, someone's requested it, but it's got X, Y, Z in it. Do we feel this is something we should do from stage? What process, what thoughts go into your guys' presentation from the stage, whether it's the words you're speaking, the songs you're singing, so that you know that what you're putting out there is that content that's going to encourage and uplift and welcome people in?
That's great. That's a great question. Let me set that up. I will get there. But for the audience that we're speaking to here, I've had a lot of wonderful positive influences in my life, and I get to routinely uphold the legacy of two of those. Now, one of those is Mr. Ziegler, and when I speak and work with youth myself, that kind of thing, I'm always quick to point out Mr. Ziegler and what his effect has been on me. The other legacy I get to uphold is the Gaither legacy, which has been Bill Gaither, who is now 84 years old and is still out there doing what he loves to do at a high level and affecting, to this day, millions of people. You'd think, well, he's a songwriter. Yeah, he's one of these multi-skilled people as well. He's songwriter, producer, programmer. I could put 12 different labels on that guy. but he has always come down to a foundation. He grew up on a farm in Indiana, and so he formed some very basic structural beliefs that support his life early on, and he's been very true to those throughout his life. One of those had to do when he's the creative person and he's coming up. He and Gloria have written these profound lyrics, you know. Let's make sure these lyrics are theologically sound before we start shouting them off a stage. They may rhyme and sound great, and you may be able to get everybody singing these. Let's make sure. I remember they had a lyric back in the 70s called "I Am Loved." We talked about this on the pre-call, but I can risk loving you, for the one who knows me best loves me most. Now take a lyric like that. That's poetic and beautiful. Is that scripturally sound? Is that real? Is that going to be real 20 years from now? Is it going to help me on Tuesday? So those are delicate questions that have to be answered. And I've seen them time and time again reformulate a lyric because they didn't think it directly stated it the way it should have been. Or, you know, if it was a song that they were evaluating that wasn't one of their songs, they just wouldn't sing it. He says one of his favorite songs to sing, and it's not one of theirs, it's a song written by Andre Crouch years ago called "Through It All."
Yes.
I've learned to trust through it all.
Yes.
And because life is going to throw you a lot of different things. And we've seen everything from viruses to hurricanes to you name it, all kinds of rebellion in this last 6-7 months. And through it all, what I've learned is trusting. Now that's a fair lyric. That's good. And so those kind of judgments are made on a nightly basis by him to get to your question, Isaiah. And he is the one calling those shots in our group setting. Now, when it comes to recording, what we're going to record, a little more of a group decision there. But on a nightly basis, what we're singing, we don't have a set program. In 28 years, I've never had a set program. I would love to have had a set program. I've never known what we're doing. I know the first 2 or 3 songs we're probably going to do, and from there on out, he turns around every song for 28 years and tells me what it's going to be. And I will. I have a little microphone. I talk to the band. I have another little switch. I can talk to the lighting and technical people, cameras, and then all that. So I'm sort of a liaison in that role. I'm also playing the guitar, but I'm a technical liaison at that point. And then part of the hats that I wear, in all of this. And then he'll change on a dime. He'll just say, hey, you know what? I was going to do that. Let's do this. And it's all based on what life is giving us in that moment. Life is giving you, we've got about 3 hours with a crowd there. And we'll probably never get that back with a lot of those people. I can't tell you the times I've seen somebody at a program and they say, I'll see you next time. And that I haven't seen them again, because of life. So life is giving you this wonderful opportunity right here. What are you going to do with that? And I got a song I can do in 3 minutes that'll make you smile, or I got a song that can change your life. Same amount of time. So what are you going to do? And he's evaluating all of that and putting that together. That's a tough job. Not just a producer, but being sensitive to what's going on in the moment. And I have such respect for that. And it is a responsibility, as you say, Isaiah, because Bill has always used that phrase, what good is it on Tuesday? If we sing it on Saturday or Sunday, am I going to be able to live it on Tuesday? And that's pretty real. I like that.
Wow.
Kevin, how can our audience learn more about you? Where can they go and find more about what you are doing?
Just come on over to the house. It's 24. No. I have a website. It's kevinwilliamsmusic.com. So common spelling, kevinwilliamsmusic.com. We are on Facebook. Facebook and Twitter is one Kevin Williams on both of those. So just find me. Find a guy that looks like me. It's probably me. And then the YouTube channel. We're always doing video stuff. And that's Kevin Williams TV on YouTube. all that stuff's there. And then my email address, if you want to talk to me, I would love to talk to you. If I could help you in any way I could, I'd take that on. That'd be wonderful. And it's Kevin@KevinWilliamsmusic.com.
Now, you had a recording that you just released this summer. That this was part of the way that I got connected with you. That's, for those of you who do not know what that is called a CD.
It's a CD.
Abbreviation of compact disc.
That's right. Now, we do the download on this as well, and we stream this as well. So, but a lot of our older people still love to get a CD. This is a patriotic project. I do guitar instrumental projects and have done, I don't know, 16, 17 of those over the years. And we did that's a little bluegrass thing we did. And then here's so Isaiah, I need to send you one of these. And then
that'd be awesome.
That's Christmas project. And so I've always done those instrumental guitar things. I just love doing those.
Wow.
I'd wanted to do a patriotic thing for quite some time. And as you said, James, we released it right at 4th of July, which is great timing.
Perfect.
It's taken on a life of its own. We did God Bless America, America the Beautiful, a lot of really standard kind of songs on there. I did my guitar arrangement of the national anthem. And so some beautiful music on there. And I thought it would be an encouragement to anybody that was patriotic. You know, I thought that's about all I thought about it. Here again, I committed that to the Lord and said, God, you do whatever you need to do with this. And if it's done after the 4th of July, it'll just be done, whatever, you know. I think you really have to do that with whatever you have in your life, whatever's entrusted to you. You have to let it go to God. So I did. And as a result, we've had numerous veterans that have gotten the project and sent us emails back and said, man, I've been encouraged like this. I hadn't had this in a long time. Heard the music. That's why I signed up, was what one guy said. And we've had a few military deployed people respond very, very positively. It's gone to 3 countries so far, which I didn't dream it would go outside our country. Just a lot of cool things have happened. And we had a couple of guys come forward and say, we would love to donate these to veterans. If we buy X number, could you have a way to get them in the hands of veterans? We have now partnered with Reboot Recovery, which is an organization nationwide that works with veterans who are recovering from combat trauma. And they are getting them in the hands of veterans everywhere now, as we have people that sign on to furnish them. So you can email me about that. If you know somebody that would like to donate a certain number of these or something, we have a way to do that. And you can just email me about that and I'll give you all the details. But that here again, that's been a life beyond what I dreamed for one little project, you know. And when you truly let go and let God and the greater good happen with your gifts and talents and whatever God's given you, you have to seek a multiplication factor for your life. Your life is just not big enough on its own to do what it's intended to do. Now that just came out of my mouth, but that's pretty profound. So somebody write that down.
Hashtag that and tweet it.
But you get multiplied when all of this stuff is bubbling over inside you, and it is designed to serve others, and in my case, to serve the Lord and His plan for my life. Now it gets multiplied 5 times, 10 times, 100 times, and then you become something bigger than you could have ever been on your own.
Wow.
And your life will take a shape that you will be so proud of, and you'll live out a legacy. And that's truly legacy life right there.
Wow.
Wow. Well, thank you. For the audience, the information to get in touch with Kevin and to find all these things will be in the show notes. We'll give you links there so you can have this. Kevin, on behalf of our Generation Ziegler audience and all of us as part of the Ziegler family, thank you for being our guest.
Yes.
And this has really meant a lot.
Thank you.
It's really been a lot to us.
Quite an honor for me. And Brandon and Isaiah, thank you for your comments. And I loved getting to talk to you guys. You're very sharp, and love to stay in your lives and what's going on with you. James, thank you for doing what you do with some very important youth. We have a little organization called Kevin's Kids in Kentucky there, and we work with kids who are economically challenged. The greater part of what we get to do is to instill principles for living in them, ideas and ways to think. And you've got to shape your paradigm towards success and get outside yourself, figure out how to serve and how to multiply. So I love what you're doing with Gen Z. And thank you for your commitment to it. It's wonderful, brother.
It seemed like it was a natural fit. I mean, for us to call it Generation Ziegler, and
Absolutely.
This generation of youth is actually called Generation Z. It seemed like it was
Worked out well.
It did work out very well. So to our Generation Ziegler community, download this, share it with your friends, share out the podcast to other folks, and join us again next week as we bring you another show. Thanks, guys.
God bless you guys.
Bye.